Okay, I gotta go, but I'll read it because I have to be obedient. Okay, no, thank you so much. Thank you, sorry.
All righty. Good afternoon, or I guess we're in early evening now. All right, we want everybody to settle down. We've got one of our last presentations of the day today, so get everybody that's at the door to come on in. Let's take our seats again. All right, you got quiet down in the back, so just, all right. All righty. It's been a great day once again. Thank all of you who have been out. Again, give yourselves a big hand because you all are the real troopers and really helped to make all of this happen. We are honored and privileged to have a real trailblazer and someone who, in many ways, like our own Dr. Reverend Al Sharpton, she doesn't stop. She makes sure that she is where she needs to be, when she needs to be, and doing what she needs to do. And we are honored to have her with us today. We're going to be bringing up Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. She represents the 18th Congressional District of Texas, located in Houston. She is the third-ranking Democrat on the House Judiciary Committee and chair of its subcommittee on crime, terrorism, and homeland security. She has a long record of accomplishments in the field of civil and human rights, criminal justice reform, and voting rights. Congresswoman Jackson Lee is the principal sponsor of H.R. 40, a bill establishing a commission to study and develop reparation proposals for African Americans, which has 191 co-sponsors. Oh, okay.
216.
260 now, all right. 260 co-sponsors in the House of Representatives. H.R. 40 was first introduced by former Congressman John Conyers, and we are excited to have the Congresswoman with us today, here to speak more critically on this piece of legislation, which, by the way, you may remember in 2019, Reverend Sharpton had each of the presidential candidates commit to supporting H.R. 40. So we are pleased to welcome Congresswoman, long supporter of National Action Network, Sheila Jackson Lee. And I would just add very quickly, I'm sure she'll say a little bit more, but she was accompanied today by a historic figure in our community also. Just want to mention him very quick, Dr. Ron Daniels, but the Congresswoman can say more about Dr. Daniels. Let's give a big welcome to Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee.
Thank you, Congressman, very much. I'm using a podium today. I'm used to jumping around. And I may leave this podium and kick my leg up or jump around or something. You know what? Where 2 or 3 or 20 or 40 are gathered, then we know that we're in good place. There's somebody, a saint, is in the back of the room where 2 or 3 are gathered. We know that we have those that will carry this word. Let me tell you that this journey has been long. I was in the airport yesterday from Washington, D.C., but we had the vote that I could not leave as a senior member of the Judiciary Committee. Many of you may have seen me sitting in back of Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson during the hearings. You know, they call me an armor bearer. And if something had gone awry, you would have wanted me to be there. And so I tried to be there and then get to the airport. But you know how rain and all of that was pouring in Washington, they shut you down, they shut us down, I couldn't get here. But I promised Reverend Al Sharpton, the esteemed president of Action Network, National Action Network, and I keep my word. There should be something for that. And so even as we proceeded today to join Judge Brown Jackson, got to be a little relationship, Sheila Jackson Lee, you know, we're all connected. The slaves were all on the same plantation. We had a rejoicing affirmation today. And because I wanted to sit in a rocking chair some years, and be able to talk to great-grandchildren, yes, I expect that kind of blessing, I wanted to be able to say that the first words of the new Associate Justice to be, I was sitting in the room. So I did that, and barely running through the airport. And it's difficult when a basketball dunker like me, but has legs of a volleyball player, tries to run through the airport. But I made it. As the song says, I never would have made it, but I made it. And I wanted to do so because I wanted to have the mark of H.R. 40 on this historic convention. And I wanted to speak to all of you from a legislative, passionate, logistical approach for you to know what the journey is. There are a lot of folk that will be welcomed when this commission is established. All voices. Let me be very clear. I don't mince my words, and I don't give up on my promises. That's why I'm standing here today. Everybody's voice will be heard on H.R. 40. But what we need to do in the logistical landmine is to be able to get H.R. 40 done. To get it done, to get it out on the road, to let it come to New York and hear your story. Go down to where the slaves are buried with concrete on top of them. Now, many of you don't know, John Conyers and I were here for Abdou Diablo. We weren't here 5 years later. We weren't here 5 months later. We came as a Judiciary Committee and listened to brothers and sisters at a community college in Brooklyn. We met his mom. Was a baby congressperson, but we were warriors for criminal justice reform. We are not in the Judiciary Committee mindset that John left his imprint on, Johnny come lately. We have been where you've needed us to be. And so I'm delighted to be here as well with a fellow traveler who started with John Conyers and your fellow New Yorker, Dr. Ron Daniels with the African American Commission on Reparations is here today, and any hard questions I'm going to throw at him. Give him a very big hand, please. He has been stupendous. So let me begin. I'm going to be wheeling and dealing in terms of the theories. First of all, I was in the region when the Russians invaded Ukraine. I leave early tomorrow morning to go back to that region. And I always like to explain, besides having an international affairs portfolio for communities that need housing and otherwise that I'm very good at getting done, why we are in that. Well, first of all, I want the same appreciation and understanding for America for the pain that I experience. And so I'm the bigger person. There's no doubt that the killing of babies should be unacceptable to everybody. There is no doubt that the mistreatment of people of color should be accepted to everybody. There is no doubt that the destruction of communities should be unacceptable to everybody. And once we each understand each other's pain, then maybe we will get far ahead than where we are today. So if I was to read this, I'm going to get mad. The suggestion that Zelensky calls Russian invasion genocide. One thing about it, when you mess with babies, and they mess with our babies, I want people to be able to understand how this is a convergence of humanity. And so I wear this to say that I am the bigger person. When I go to the floor on reparations, I expect people that don't look like me to stand up and say, I understand. How fast can I run to vote for it? I understand. Because America will go nowhere unless they can deal with the original sin. We will go nowhere unless we take the bag off our eyes, and that we can be in the water fountain on our job on the 59th floor, or we could be at the kitchen table, or we could be at our child's school, or we can get up in church and talk about, say the word, reparation. So I want to come away today with you saying the word, reparations. And that's what H.R. 40 has been. It was introduced 1 year after the American Civil Liberties Act. That was the reparations for Japanese Americans. Who helped push that? African Americans in the United States Congress, unselfish Congressional Black Caucus, led by John Conyers. I was not there then. And we have never had the Japanese Americans leave our side for reparations. It's been a long journey. That was 1989. If you can calculate 30 some odd years plus, and we're still here fighting because people cannot equate pain that we have. I'm not going to allow it. I will keep moving and pushing and educating across this nation until the mighty waters of justice rise up. And so let me share with you the words that were propelled, came from her soul, words she did not have to say today. Can you imagine those of us sitting there and the tears rolling down our eyes? But clearly when she said, I am the dream of the slave. Oh, nobody else, no other justice had ever said that. I am the dream. On the White House grounds, I am the dream of the slaves. In the week that the dreamer was killed, but the dream lives. H.R. 40 is the dream of the slaves. And maybe Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, a little slave girl that never lived, may rest in peace. And so I have to tell you, thank you, Reverend Al Sharpton. He has supported me, and in those presidential elections, he put every presidential candidate on record. And so we have every single leadership person on this bill, starting with the Speaker of the House and all presidential persons, including the present president at this time. That's why I need you to run away from here armed as armor bearers, pushing toward the passage of this legislation. And let me be very clear. I said it before, I'll say it again. No one is going to be left out of this legislation. No one. So let me begin where I have to go very fast because I assume, let me be very, very fast. Let me take you through the Constitution to let you know that the law says there should be H.R. 40. And by the way, let me just make this point so that you will know. With the rise and normalization of white supremacist expression during the Trump administration, the discussion of H.R. 40 and the concept of restorative justice have gained more urgency. But we've got to see it within ourselves. It's got to be from New York to California to the heart of the heartland down to the deep south. It's got to garner the attention of the mainstream commentator, which it has, illustrating the need for a national reckoning. That's what I call on. A national reckoning with truth. The designation of this legislation, H.R. 40, is not just humorous, but it deals with the intended memorialization of the promise that we never got. The order by General William T. Sherman in his 1865 Special Field Order number 15, by the way, coming from Texas, you realize that we lasted 2 more years. Don't laugh, some of you should be up here. That's our Juneteenth, 1865. You were emancipated if you lived here or came this way, 1863. But Texas and some of the other states did not get that. And so in 1865, however, Special Field Order number 15 was to redistribute 400,000 acres of formerly Confederate-owned coastal plots, land in South Carolina and Florida, subdivided in 40-acre plots. Never got it. Sound familiar? Never got it. Let me tell you who noticed that we did not get it. A man who always speaks to us as a beloved community. That's why we should not jump to any conclusions. Let this commission get started and find the facts. Go down to the plantations. Talk to you in New York, as I said. Dr. King in 1963, you remember, you use it all the time, lamented the bounced check, the promissory note that keeps coming back marked insufficient funds. And so we have taken his book that he ran off to write, because he looked at the 250,000 people and he said, you know what, all these people are here, and all of them have never gotten the promise. He went off to write the book, Why We Can't Wait. And so we in this movement have adopted Why We Can't Wait. And that is getting to the point of we can't wait. And that's why I go anywhere I can to try to rile people up, that there's no shame to discussing the idea and the concept of reparations. The wealth gap on reparations is about $13,000 to $17,000 for a family of 4 African American, $151,000 for a family of 4 white Americans. And there's a sister or brother saying, because these numbers fluctuate as to where you live. And so there should be no one trying to get us to stop. We need to move and say why we can't wait. Let me give you some other things now. But stay with me. Stay with me, because, you know, a lawyer and a Judiciary Committee member of some years wants you to go around bragging about the fact that there is no doubt that reparation is both legitimate legal concept, it is restorative, it is repair. I'm delighted to have one of my wonderful allies we're like cousins, Congresswoman Barbara Lee, standing with me. Spoke about reparations, by the way, at the United Nations last week. It went all over the world. They're waiting for America as she fights for the brutality of a desperate war criminal, Vladimir Putin, for the babies in Ukraine. We come to acknowledge the beloved community. Let me quickly go. Not sure what the time is. All right? Amendment 1. This is the insults or the depriving of your rights. Can you get it? All right. Amendment 1, the First Amendment, is to guarantee you the freedoms of religion and press. But it is also the right of the people to peaceably to assemble and to petition their government. We've been denied that. We've had our moments, have we not? When we have been diminished, denigrated for standing up for criminal justice reform. In the Judiciary Committee room, I have my friends on the other side of the aisle. We have to battle them back about Black Lives Matter. and trying to suggest it's white supremacy, Black Lives Matter. How dare you compare the two? So you've had some problems with the First Amendment, have you not? Stay with me now. You have had some problems with the Fourth Amendment. Unreasonable search and seizure. No knock. No knock. Some folk have got in your house, broken in. You're trying to find out what has happened. Police officer walks into an apartment of a brother sitting at a table in Dallas, thought it was their apartment, shot them dead. Unreasonable search and seizure. It was only your voices that brought these cases to justice. Oh, keep going now. Fifth Amendment. Fifth Amendment is due process. But it is also an issue of the presentment of the indictment of a grand jury. Now, these were during slavery that these were passed. It also says not to be deprived of life, liberty, or property without the process of law, nor shall private property be taken. This was in place in slavery. We had no due process rights. We had no ability to keep property. If we had a little plot of land that husband and wife, in the narratives of slave narratives, you read them, they called each other husband and wife, and didn't have a lot of names going around. They would take your property, they would take your babies and sell them as soon as you could look at it. Violation of the Fifth Amendment. Is there not need for reparations and repair? Sixth Amendment, the right to a speedy trial and trial by jury. You were a slave, you had no trial. Your trial was a treat. Or maybe you might get it quick with a gun. Please understand the historical record that documents what you lost, and this was around. Now, we know that you weren't a citizen, but it doesn't matter. You were on this soil. This Constitution was in place. Seventh Amendment, the right to a trial by jury. As I said, if you were involved in any incident that master did not like, you were directly gone. You are being deprived of the basic decency. Reparations. Say the word. And now we come to this understanding, the Ninth Amendment. You all never paid attention to that. It says, the enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. Well, you retain nothing, but others retain the rights to oppress and suppress you. All right? Ninth Amendment, y'all skip past that. Once you get past the first, you said freedom of press. 10th Amendment was the one that said states' rights. That's what the South said to the Union. Get out of here. I'm speaking layman's terms now. We got the 10th Amendment. We will do anything we want to do. Reparations. Because it meant that those of us who were housed as slaves in the South, they used the 10th Amendment, states' rights. President Lincoln, don't talk to us, states' rights. States' rights to hang Kwame, well, whoever. Wasn't Kwame then. We didn't get those names then. Kente. It was our right because of states' rights. Reparations. I'm going to finish up just a minute. 13th Amendment. It wasn't completely completed. It ended slavery, but it said that you can still put folk to work that was in jail. Do I understand that? Reparations. And so all of the convicts were working in all the plantations. Worked to death. From down south to up south. 13th Amendment. Yeah. Freed, but yet did not. Reparations. 14th Amendment. Now this is it. This start getting up because you were freed now. But you got the 14th Amendment. Shall not enforce any law which will abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States or deprive any state of life, liberty, or property. That's the 14th Amendment. That's sort of equal justice. Reparations. The right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged for the United States. But yet, because of race or color or creed, you are still paying poll tax. So here's your thing that you ignore. You ignore the 19th Amendment because it is suggested that it is for women. But the language says the right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States on the account of sex. that still did not apply to black women. We were still struggling. We're still struggling. Still struggling. And then finally, they had to do an amendment to suggest that those of you 18, all of you in this room, could vote. But even so, if you're 18 in Selma, if you're 18 in Georgia, if you're 18 in states that said that black folk can't vote, you were deprived the right to vote. You have a long systemic journey that documents the importance of passing H.R. 40. It is the umbrella for COVID-19. I'm coming. I don't see anybody tell me to stop, but anyhow. Let me hold this up. Let me hold this up, because I'm just going to do show and tell. I'm just going to do show and tell. And then I can come, and there might be one or two show and tell. Harvard study, reparations for slave. Now, didn't say Sheila Jackson Lee did the study, did they? Did one of you do the study? Okay, so we know Judge Brown Jackson graduated from Harvard, so now everybody's saying it's okay. Harvard study, reparations for slavery could have reduced COVID-19 infections and death in the United States. No access to health care. I want New Yorkers to remember what happened, because I was watching you. I was working with New York Presbyterian because we were trying to find out what to do down in Texas. They were telling us that folk were showing up at the emergency room. Somebody said, take an aspirin. They didn't have a doctor to go to, take an aspirin. They went home. Somebody tell me, and the next thing they had to find them carrying them out, because it was so dangerous at that time. If they had access to health care, the deaths, says, a new study suggests monetary reparations for black descendants of people enslaved in the United States could have cut SARS transmission and COVID-19 rates among black individuals and the population at large. Because if we had it, it was being spread. Is that not true? Will the court allow me to submit that into the record? All right now. A letter here. Oh, there's not a amount of people supporting reparations. 350 that we have garnered, organizations from around the nation and even around the world. The Rabbinical Council, Presbyterians, Episcopalians, Catholics, all manner of Japanese organizations, all manner of activists, all manner of human rights, for it is a human rights. Listen to this, All Healers Mental Health Alliance, Amherst Mindfulness, Amnesty International, Appeal Incorporated, Arise for Social Justice, Asian Americans Advancing Social Justice. How about that? California Alliance for Youth and Community Justice, Board of Aldermen, City of New Bern, North Carolina, Center for Gender and Refugee Studies, Children's Defense Fund, California, Minnesota, Christian Church of Disciples, City of Durham, North Carolina, Yonkers, New York. Wow. The Reparations Project, United Church of Christ, United Methodist Church, Union for Reform Judaism, Unitarian Universalists. We have gotten people from all over. Why? Because they know that the time is now. So one point to let you know why this commission is so very important. Because we have never paused in America to take a moment to understand what happened when the wife called her husband and said, "Husband, come here. They're about to sell me and all your children." And whether her husband was able to provide that cover. And then 1865, 100 years later, in the 1950s, a little earlier than that, Emmett Till lost his life. 4,000 of us were hung between the 1880s and into 1950s and 60s. Hung. No trial. Thank you for Mamie, his mother, who said, "I'm not going to deny my child his justice." We pushed and pushed. And finally, in 2022, passed the Emmett Till anti-lynching law to make it a federal crime to lynch people in the United States of America. That is why I come to you today to try to encapsulate the dream of a slave and to give you a factual moment as I draw to a conclusion. Listen to this story, if you would. Henrietta Wood, she had a name, was born into slavery in Kentucky, freed as an adult, and later kidnapped and sold back into slavery. How many laws were violated? How much lack of dignity was that? A lot, brother. And the problem we have is documenting all these stories that may be lodged in your family's records. Historian W. Caleb McDaniel, in his book, Sweet Taste of Liberty, A True Story of Slavery and Restitution, describes how after the Civil War, she sued her kidnapper for $20,000 and was awarded ultimately $2,500. It is the passion and the solution that counts, that documents, that someone gave credit to the idea of reparations and the harm that she suffered. Yeah, it was $2,500, purportedly the largest verdict ever awarded for enslavement in the United States to date. And about $65,000 it will be worth in 2019. Don't give up on us. Don't hold your head down. Don't say that it never can be done. I refuse to do it in the name of the slaves who died firstborn. And like the babies who did not live in Ukraine, firstborn, then died. Many babies died and never saw freedom. I will not rest until we give them the dream of a slave. I want the little slave girl that did not live to rest in peace and rest in power. I wanted to make sure that my research was credible and strong. And I wanted the United States, critical race theory, the weaving in the 20th century of redlining, of refusing GI dollars to soldiers, of the discrimination in all colleges, of not being able to have a college. I wanted all of them to be reckoned with. And so we close by simply saying, I come to you today to say that we have joined in a body of legislators who don't look like you and me. I thank them for standing up, signing on to this legislation. It's now for the people to be that when, to ask the question when, to say why we can't wait, to join the Coalition of 350, to join Dr. Daniels, who have been at the side of this bill for 30, 40 years, in COBRA, the Human Rights Watch, Evanston, Illinois, Councilmember Ruth Simmons, New Jersey, California, 42 other jurisdictions. It's time for your federal government, who gave the infrastructure and the construct of slavery, even as we were emancipated, continued because of the compromise in the 1880s, allowed the South to continue its segregated, vile, and vicious suppression and violence against us. And though we rose, as Maya said, still I rise. Though we rose and came to northern cities, and though we took our places in the field of athletics and science, though we had W. Du Bois and Booker T. Washington and George Washington Carver, though we had astronauts and the women who sat in Alabama and wrote the formula for NASA, though we had your children, your grandparents, who though their backs were down a little bit, their pride could not be snuffed out. Even with all of that, I come to you today with the dream of a slave. And I ask you to ask yourself the question, if they show you who they are, that is who they are. No, that's not for the other people. It's for you. If you show us who you are, if you lift up this boat, if you run to Washington, if you send tweets, if you organize here, if you use the Constitution to say, I am legitimately vested in reparations, you will watch this become at least the fact-finding, and it says develop reparation proposals to carry us and our wings across this nation. I thank you for allowing me to take just a moment to be able to pronounce you. We too are Americans. Don't take my joy. Don't take my life. Don't take my constitutional right to the book and the patriotism. Don't take my sons or daughters who wear the uniform, who have worn the uniform, who has died for this country. Say the word reparations. Say the word reparations. H.R. 40. Say the words. Say the word. H.R. 40. Thank you, Reverend Sharpton, for giving me the opportunity. Thank you, Counselor, for giving me the opportunity. God bless all of you. God bless the United States of America.